My wife, Megan, and I love the outdoors. We've done a lot of weekend trips and camping adventures over the years, but after what happened to us last summer, I don't think we'll ever set foot in the woods again. It was supposed to be a quick, relaxing getaway. We found a spot deep in the forest, far from any campsites or hiking trails, a perfect place for some peace and quiet. The plan was to spend 2 nights there, enjoy some campfire meals, and just unplug from the world. The weather was great, the air was crisp, and everything felt perfect. That changed pretty quickly. The first night, we set up camp and cooked dinner by the fire. As the sun began to set, everything around us grew incredibly still. It wasn't unusual for the woods to quiet down after dark, but this was different. The silence felt heavy, like something was off. Megan even joked about how creepy it was, but we laughed it off and decided to head to bed early. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of twigs snapping outside our tent. It was faint, but unmistakable. At first, I thought it was just an animal, maybe a deer wandering through the area. But then I heard it again, closer this time. I nudged Megan awake. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She listened for a moment, then nodded. "Probably just a raccoon or something. Go back to sleep." But something didn't feel right. The noises weren't random, they were deliberate, like footsteps, slow and careful, like someone was trying to move without being heard. I stayed still, straining to hear more. The sound of footsteps grew closer, circling our tent. I didn't want to freak Megan out, so I whispered that I was going to check it out. I grabbed the flashlight, unzipped the tent quietly, and stepped outside. The fire had died down to embers, casting just enough light to see the outlines of the trees. I shined the flashlight around, but there was nothing. No sign of any animal or person. I stood there for a few minutes, heart pounding, listening to the silence. Then, just as I was about to go back inside the tent, I heard it again, this time, from deeper in the woods. A branch cracked, and then I heard what sounded like a low whisper. It was so faint I couldn't make out the words, but it was definitely a voice. I hurried back into the tent, trying not to alarm Megan, but she could tell something was wrong. "Did you see anything?" she asked, her voice shaky. "No," I lied, "nothing out there. Probably just some animal." We laid there for the rest of the night, barely sleeping, jumping at every small noise. But nothing else happened, and by the time the sun came up, I convinced myself it had just been my imagination playing tricks on me. The next day was normal enough. We hiked a bit, ate lunch by the fire, and tried to shake off the weirdness from the night before. But as the sun started to set again, that uneasy feeling came back. We decided to stay up late, sitting by the fire, and keep watch this time, just in case. Around midnight, it happened again. We heard footsteps in the distance, slowly approaching our campsite. This time, Megan heard it too, and the look on her face told me she was just as freaked out as I was. The footsteps stopped just beyond the reach of the firelight, and we sat there, frozen, listening. Then, from the darkness, we heard it, a low, raspy voice. This time, it was clear, but still too far away to make out what was being said. It sounded like someone was talking to themselves, mumbling incoherently. I grabbed the flashlight again, but Megan grabbed my arm, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't," she said. "Don't go out there." I hesitated, but the curiosity, or maybe the fear, got the better of me. I stood up, shining the flashlight into the woods. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees, but there was no one there. The voice stopped. The footsteps stopped. All I could hear was the crackling of the fire and my own breathing. I turned back toward Megan, and that's when I saw it. Just outside the circle of light, maybe 20 feet from where we sat, was a figure. It was standing perfectly still, half hidden behind a tree, watching us. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it wasn't an animal. It wasn't some shadow playing tricks on my mind. It was a person. "Megan, get in the tent," I whispered, trying to stay calm. She didn't move at first, her eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" "Just get in the tent," I repeated, my voice shaking. She crawled into the tent, and I followed, pulling the zipper shut behind us. My mind was racing. Who the hell was out there? Why were they watching us? I didn't want to think about it, but there was no other explanation. Someone had followed us deep into the woods. We sat in the tent, holding our breaths, listening for any sound outside. For a few minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then, the footsteps started again. Slowly, methodically, they circled our tent, just like the night before. Whoever it was, they were toying with us. We stayed up all night, not daring to move. Eventually, the footsteps stopped, and whoever, or whatever, had been out there was gone by sunrise. As soon as it was light, we packed up and left. We didn't talk much on the hike back to the car, but I could see it in Megan's eyes. She was just as terrified as I was. When we got to the car, we found something that made my blood run cold. On the windshield was a single handprint, smeared in dirt. It hadn't been there when we parked. We didn't report it. We didn't want to think about what might have happened if we'd stayed another night. But I'll never forget that feeling, being watched from the darkness, knowing someone was out there, playing with us. I don't know who or what it was. But I do know one thing: we'll never go camping again.